We start with your voice, your vote, up for debate in court.
Today, a hearing for the Trump campaign's lawsuit claiming some voters' ballots were rejected when they shouldn't have been. A campaign even bringing in a former acting attorney general, Matthew Whitaker, to assist in this case. He only served in the administration for a short time, but stayed loyal to the president as he entered private life. Many of the campaign's lawsuits across the country were rejected for a lack of evidence, and election officials singled out in Arizona say there is no evidence of widespread failure to count votes here either.
Valdez was listening to that hearing all afternoon, but before we get to what happened, a closer look at the problem in question.
On Election Day, voters eager to vote in person lined up outside vote centers across Maricopa County, more than 165,000 of them to be exact. Voters filled out their ballots at a poll booth, and many given Sharpies to do so. Then, once they were done, they slipped their ballots into on-site tabulators that would count their ballots right then and there. If there was an overvote, though, a contest where one voter voted for more candidates than allowed, tabulators are designed to recognize that and alert voters on that screen. Then they give them a choice to either get their ballot back, spoil it, and mark a new one, or they can send it through to be cast and counted as is. If they do, and there's still an overvote, the race where that exists won't be counted for either candidate. Now, the Trump campaign alleges in some cases, voters didn't know casting their ballot as is could keep their votes for president from counting, and actually say poll workers in some cases sent ballots through without explaining that. But with no way to check on if their ballots were counted after the fact, the campaign argues some voters were disenfranchised and want the ballots in question to be counted again by hand.
Well, Nicole Valdez joining us live now. Exactly how many votes are in question here, Nicole?
Katie, we're only talking about maybe 1%, less than 200 ballots that were cast on Election Day of the 165,000 that we got across Maricopa County on that day. So a really small number of ballots, and the state argues not nearly enough to make any change in the results here. And that's if all of those were truly not counted correctly, which at this point has not been proven.
Yeah, a fraction of the votes. We know the Trump campaign has been asking people to report their experiences in. Who was called to speak in court today?
We actually heard from a couple different voters who say they were there. It either happened to them or they saw other voters have poll workers basically press that cast button for them and send that ballot through, which they say, they weren't notified that there was going to be any, no counting if there was actually an overvote there. But the interesting part was when those voters were asked by the defense here, what exactly prompted their concerns? Why do they believe that their ballots were truly not counted correctly? They said they actually didn't really think about it and didn't really raise the concern until after the fact. That's after they talked to lawyers who brought this case forward. They said even their family and their friends, and really it's more of a fear. None of these voters have actual hard evidence to say that their votes weren't counted correctly. That's because when you vote in person on Election Day, you can't exactly go online and track your ballot as you could if you voted early.
So, and did the judge make any major decisions today?
No decision today, and that's really the question, is what decision could that judge make? The resolution the Trump campaign is asking for here is to have those ballots in question go through what they call a hand count audit or adjudication, but that only happens with early ballots because, again, voters don't have the option to go back and fix mistakes like they do when they vote in person. But in order to even do that, the county said it would be close to impossible. They basically would have to go back to more than 2 million ballots that have already been counted, try to cherry pick out the ballots in question here, which would not be a task. Since we have secret ballots, there's no names on the ballots for them to be able to do that. So essentially, election workers would have to go back through boxes and recount ballots depending on which vote centers they say they had these issues in. Katie.
Nicole Valdez following the election for months for us. Thank you.